Alright, what's going on everyone? My name is Mr. Rage22. Welcome back to another one of my game reviews. Hope you guys are doing well and I hope you enjoyed this video. For today's review, we are going to be talking and reviewing Outlast 2. Now, as you guys know, I made a video about like a couple days ago talking about why the first Outlast was overrated. I talked about some things I just didn't like about an Outlast and just like overall the gameplay. And for the most part, Outlast 2 is no different, except this one is actually not overrated. This one's actually underrated, but it's still got the same problem as typical Outlast. Like the game just making you too helpless when it really shouldn't be in some aspects. I'm not going to explain this again. If you guys want to see why I didn't like the first Outlast, I will leave that in the link in the description, and I would appreciate if you guys do watch it. I would definitely appreciate that because kind of struggling with views right now, but and I do make some good points. The video is somewhat controversial because, so many people loved the first Outlast, myself included, but there's just some things I really don't like about the Outlast series overall, and some things I really wish and hope will be changed in Outlast Trials. But, anyways, without further ado, because I'm kind of rambling on, let's get straight into the review. Now, Outlast 2 is, let me start by saying Outlast 2 is a lot more darker than the first game. This is probably one of the second most darkest horror games ever made, probably, because of just, the subject matter and the tone. I'm not going to spoil the story, but, there is just some extremely disturbing things you will see in this game. And one of the criticisms of Outlast 2 is people were saying that it was too edgy, but in Outlast 1, you had one of the inmates masturbating on top of a pile of dead bodies. So, I don't really think you could say that this one was too edgy when, Outlast 1 had stuff like that going. And of course, you had Frank Monera, who was the cannibal, who was really, you literally see him eating people. So, I really don't think Outlast 2 is any more edgy than Outlast 1. But anyways, you're just gonna be seeing a lot of disturbing stuff in here. Um, you got your typical dead bodies, but you got more messed up stuff like, a bunch of burnt up dead babies and little girls hanging, from suicide and stuff like that. Just a lot of dark subject matter. And even the story of Outlast 2 is also just pretty dark and just really unsettling. And I like how some horror game stories do that. I like how a horror game has a story that's not only disturbing or stuff, but it's also really unsettling. The story and of what happens in it is it's also just really really unsettling. So Outlast 2 does have a story like that, and if you are into stuff like that, you're going to at least like the story of Outlast 2. So now let's get right into the gameplay. So Outlast 2 is a much more hardcore survival horror game, and let me also start by saying it is a lot more difficult than the first one. And Outlast 2 also plays more like a typical survival horror game as well. You've got resources, there's hiding still, and also kind of like a Resident Evil game. You gotta find things that are important for your survival. Of course, you got your batteries from the first game, but now you also have to collect bandages because now your health in the game actually doesn't just come back, like in Outlast 1. It doesn't just your health just doesn't just come back after you get injured. Now if you get injured in Outlast 2, you actually have to bandage yourself up. My one criticism with this is I really, this is gonna be a small little nitpick, but I really don't like the animation. The animation just seems so cliche and just so boring. I mean, it's just your character Blake Lingerman, you just see him just wrapping his arm up, but it's never anything different. I mean, you could fall from you could let's say you fall from a really high edge in this game. You fall from a really high edge in the game. It injures you and you gotta use a bandage. The animation will literally just be the same thing as before, just him bandaging his arm up. But even though he fell from a ledge, shouldn't he be bandaging his leg up? I really wish Fred Bros could have made some of the healing animations different. It would have added some more variety and just made it a little bit more realistic because it's really boring. But that was a small little nitpick. But yeah, you have to collect resources. You gotta get your batteries, your bandages, and I gotta say the camcorder is much more important in this one. I mean, Outlast 1 was already very dark, but this one is just so much darker. There are some areas in this game where even if you turn up your brightness, you still can't see anything. So the camcorder is also much more important. Also, another gameplay mechanic that I did quite enjoy is you got this sound thing on your camcorder. You turn it on, and basically what it does is it records sounds in your environment. So basically what this is for is I'm sure you guys can guess, but this is so that way you could hear if there's danger ahead or if danger is close. Because This is a stealth game for the most part, especially if you're playing on a higher difficulty like Nightmare mode. This is a stealth game. You really got to use the stealth, and you really got to get creative on where you're hiding in this game because the enemies, although are not very scary, are not messing around. The enemies in this game are a lot more aggressive and a lot more brutal than they were from the variants in Outlast 1. So you really actually got to use the stealth. And the game does have some good stealth. You could hide in closets now, you could hide under beds, you could hide in barrels now, and that there is some new things that when it comes to the hide mechanics that you could do in this game that are different from the ones in Outlast 1, because like in Outlast 1 all you could do is just hide in lockers and under beds, and although that does make a return here, you now have more places to hide. You could hide in barrels, you could hide in closets, and yeah, you can also peek now. Like the peeking mechanic, it's a lot better now. Now you can actually peek while you're hiding. So like, let's say you're hiding in a barrel. Like, well, like if you hold down the left trigger on Xbox or PlayStation or on Switch, like you know what the controls are. You can like peek out. You know, like you can like peek out. And I like how like it all depends on how you're like pressing the buttons. Like if you're pressing the button softly, then like you're gonna be peeking out like slowly. So like I really like how immersive it is. You know, the game makes you feel extremely immersed when it comes to stuff like that. So yeah, but anyways, as I was saying, you really got to use the stealth in this game. And about that sound thing on your camera is basically, it like, the sonars on it, like it'll like spike up, like when there's sound coming from nearby. So like it really helps when you're using stealth because like obviously you can't see out of a closet or out of a barrel. So like you could just turn on your camcorder. And like when the game first came out, this actually would consume your battery. So thank God Red Barrels fixed that. This game was actually very unfair and very stupid when it first came out. And I feel like that might be why a majority of people hated it. But the game is a lot better now. But yeah, that obviously doesn't take your camcorder battery anymore. Now you can like use it freely without taking your battery. Now only the night vision takes your battery just like it should, and just like in the first game. But yeah, so I really like the mechanics they have in Outlast 1. Obviously, you've got some better hiding mechanics. You've got new mechanics for your camcorder because now your camcorder is just used for so much more. Because not only now are you using it to see, but now you could also now it can also help you when you're trying to use stealth because of that sound mechanic that the camcorder has. And for the most part, it does work. Like it really does work. So that's another thing I like about the actual gameplay. And if you're a stealth player, like if you're an immersed stealth player, you're gonna obviously love those mechanics. The hiding mechanics, the sound, the new sound mechanic for the camcorder, all that good stuff. So, yeah, for the most part now, the environments of Outlast 2, this is obviously the most different thing from Outlast 1. Unlike Outlast 1, which took you inside of a claustrophobic, insane asylum, Mount Massive Asylum, Outlast 2 takes place outside. Um, I'd say about maybe 80% of this game takes place outside. Meanwhile, the rest actually takes place indoors, similar to the first game. But yeah, for the most part, Outlast 2 does take place like outside, like this wilderness type area, as you guys can see on the screen over here. Um, but yeah, one thing that I people were criticizing the game for is like the area is too big. And Outlast 1 was about that claustrophobic feel. Because like you were trapped inside like the asylum, like you felt like there was no way out. But Outlast 2 actually feels even more claustrophobic because like back at the Mount Massive Asylum, like although it felt huge and although you felt like you couldn't get out, you still knew that there was a way out. You still knew that there was an exit, and you still knew that like you could get out of Mount Massive Asylum. But in Outlast 2, that's like a lot worse because like now although you're outside, there's still no way out. There's still no way out. Even if you get away from the crazy Christian people, just like the people of Temple Gate, you're still just gonna be in the middle of nowhere. So like you're still not really safe. So it truly does feel like there's no escape from Temple Gate. Hey, that rhymed, but yeah. So Outlast 2's location area feels a lot more claustrophobic because like now you're like trapped outside and like there truly is no way out because like you're literally in the middle of nowhere and like these people that have like made their home here, it feels like there's truly no escape from them, because like even if you get away from them, you're still not out of the woods, literally. So yeah. Now for the most part, what you'll be doing in the gameplay is like there is some minor exploration involved. There are going to be some times in the game where you're not being chased and killed. There is some times where you could just like explore and just like take in the scenery. So walking simulator fans and fans of survival horror, you will be very pleased with this game. As you guys know, I'm a fan of exploration and you know survival horror as well. I mean, they used to call me Luke the Explorer back in the day, and I still am. I am an explorer, so I was very pleased with the exploration in this game because if you're someone who does like your exploration, like if you are someone who just likes to immerse yourself in like just like explore this new world and this new environment that you found yourself in, then you are going to be very pleased with Outlast 2 because the game does have some some really decent exploration. And for the most part, the places that you'll be exploring in this game, even though it does take place outside, like there are going to be times where you're just going to be like exploring the outside environment. There's going to be times where you're going to be exploring indoors and outdoors. So there is a lot more variety involved, we know, with the exploration because like you're going to be exploring like the houses that these crazy Christian people have built, this cult. Like you're going to be like exploring that their houses. You're going to be exploring outdoors. And for the most part, they do change, thankfully. And I mean, because I was thinking like, like the outside and the indoor environments are just gonna like all look the same and like all feel the same. But no, each house that you explore in this game is actually different. They got their own detail, they got their own things inside them, and the same goes for like even the outside environments. So yeah, it never really does get boring. So now we're going to be talking about some things that I really don't like about this game, and that is like how unbalanced the difficulty settings are. Now, in Outlast 1, when you would play on normal difficulty, the enemies would still run after you. So like even though you didn't have to worry about dying in like 2 hits, it was still scary because the enemies were still like chasing after you, like when you would play on normal difficulty. But in Outlast 2, when you play this game on normal difficulty, the enemies don't even run after you. They act like some Michael Myers wannabes, and they're like, "Oh man, when I get to you finally, I'm gonna cut you." Like, what the hell? Why do the enemies just stroll after you? You don't. You shouldn't even run. It's a waste of stamina, and we'll get to the stamina in a minute because that's another problem with this game. But like, there's no point in even running when you play this game on normal mode because the enemies don't even run back after you. They just walk after you, and it's just so stupid. And not only that, but you can also dodge as well. You could literally dodge the enemies on normal mode. Like if you're quick enough and like if you know like which button to press, like if you press it at the exact right moment, you could actually dodge the enemies. So I feel like this game is just way too easy and way too simple on normal mode. And I am not a casual. I guess you could kind of consider me a hardcore horror gamer because I used to play like the original Resident Evils back on the hardest difficulty when I was younger. So obviously I like playing these games on the hardest difficulty, especially horror games. Horror games are no exception. I'm yet to play Resident Evil 7 on Madhouse though. But anyways, like yeah, it's just the difficulty in this game is so unbalanced because on normal mode, the game is too easy. On hard mode, the game isn't hard enough, and on nightmare mode, the game is too brutal. And I know that may sound strange, like it's nightmare mode. It's supposed to be like the hardest difficulty in the game, but the problem with nightmare mode is like this is where the stamina thing comes in. In Outlast 2, unfortunately, I don't know why Red Barrels decided to do this, but you have a stamina bar. Out of all the things, like out of all the new things, like out of all the great mechanics they had, the new stealth mechanics, the peeking, the sound thing for your camera, and this was one of the mechanics that they added to the gameplay. And like I could kind of see why because like in Outlast 1 you didn't have a stamina bar so you could run freely and you could also like loop the enemies around like just by like jumping over objects like using the game's parkour. So I could kind of see why they added stamina, but it is just so unbalanced. Like like the guy you play as, Blake Lingerman, he's in his early 30s. The man is in his prime, and you're telling me he runs off stamina in like 20 seconds. Because I think that's the max amount of time you can run. I think it's 20 seconds. I think it's actually short. I think it's like 18 or like 17 seconds before you actually start getting tired and you can't run anymore. And the problem with when you play on nightmare difficulty is like when you play on nightmare difficulty, the enemies run like the fucking Flash. There is no recoil at all. These enemies run like the Flash, and like even though you're running full speed, they're also running full speed. So you can't really think to yourself like, if I run fast enough, I could find a place to hide and I'll survive. But like, no, these enemies run almost as fast as you, and the fact that the stamina bar runs out so quickly on nightmare mode basically means that once you get spotted on nightmare mode, it's basically game over. You might as well just let them kill you because like you're not going to be able to outrun them unless you actually find the place where you're trying to go. And that is just extremely frustrating because like if like because like it's just so unbalanced because like people will say that like I'm complaining like that the game is too hard even though I'm playing on nightmare mode, but like look at another horror game, like look at another horror game and its difficulty. And like look at Outlast 1 for example. Like in Outlast 1, like basically you would die in one hit and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's the point of playing on nightmare mode, but like it just the stamina bar and everything else is just so stupid. And also the fact that the enemies don't even run after you on normal mode. So basically you can't even play on normal mode. Like unless you want like an experience that's not very scary, yes, play on normal mode. But like if you want the game to be fun and intense, then play on nightmare mode. But like it's just the stamina bar is so bad. And the bad part is the running in this game, like the running in this game, it feels so much better than it does in Outlast 1. The running in Outlast 1 actually felt somewhat unrealistic, but like the running in Outlast 2 just feels so good. It feels so smooth and so realistic at times. And it's even got this thing like when you run in real life, like like as you run, like as you like the longer you run, the more you're gonna speed up, and it looks just like that in Outlast 2 because like the longer you run in this game, the faster your character Blake will actually run, and I love that so much because it feels so realistic. The running just feels so smooth in this game, and also the parkour as well. The parkour mechanics from Outlast 1 are very much improved in Outlast 2. The parkour feels better, the climbing feels better, and like you even got a new slide mechanic. Like you could even slide in this game, and that feels so good because like I remember times in LS1 like you would have to like crouch like get under like you'd have to like get under something, and like there would be like an enemy right on your ass, and like he would like grab you out. But like now in Outlast 2, the sliding feels so good because like now you can get under like hard to reach areas without actually crouching and like taking your time while someone's about to kill you. So the sliding mechanic is also really good. But like just the stamina bar is so bad. It is so bad. It's so inconsistent, and it's just so unbalanced. Now, in terms of the scare factor, you've got your typical thing, running and hiding from the enemies. And like the first enemies that you encounter, like from the first chapter, Outlast 2 has 4 chapters, by the way. The first chapter, which is also the chapter where like you're outside in Temple Gate, like this area right here, as you can see. The Christian people, like this, the crazy Christian people, like uh, Solvin Knott's flock, they're really not that scary. I mean, their dialogue is kind of unsettling, but like them themselves, like they're not very unsettling. I mean, they look like normal. They're basically farmers, for God's sake. So like, they're really, really not that scary, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is like Outlast 2 has 4 locations, and like each of these 4 locations has their own little like setting and their own little environment. So like the game, like again, the game just has so much variety in terms of like the areas that it puts you in. Again, kind of like Layers of Fear 2 and Observer, like it's more like an adventurous game. Because like the game just has so many different environments and areas that it puts you in, and I like how the 4 chapters. Like I like how the 4 chapters have their own little environments. Like they're not the same like the last one. Like it keeps things interesting. Um, but yeah, like the enemies from chapter 1, like the cult. Yeah, they're not very scary at all. This was also the easiest chapter. Like it's got its running segments and its hiding segments, but like this was probably the easiest chapter. The second chapter is like, in my personal opinion, not only the hardest chapter, but also the most frustrating. The second chapter puts you deeper in the woods, and like this is where the claustrophobic feel from Outlast 1 kind of makes a return because like the second chapter has a lot more tighter spaces, but this was also very frustrating at times just because of how unbalanced nightmare difficulty is. There are like since like in chapter 2, since the areas are a lot more tighter, when you get chased and like in this segment of the game, it's a lot more difficult because of how like how tight the segments are. And there's also a lot of dead ends. Like there's like just there's rocks everywhere and stuff. And not only that, but like your character will kind of get stuck on things sometimes. Like if you run on top of like a rock or like something else, like your character will just stop. Blake, he'll just stop. And I'm like, dude, fucking run! What the hell? And then I look down and like I got stuck on something, and then the guy behind me kills me. So like it's really really frustrating. This whole game is just like this game just will piss you off at times. I'm just gonna say that right now. If you are playing on nightmare difficulty, this game is just going to piss you off at times, and not because of how hard the game is, because like just because of how like stupid the game can be at times. It's not. It has nothing to do with the difficulty. It's how stupid the game can be at times. But anyways, chapter 2 is the hardest segment, and not only that, but like people also complain about this game that it doesn't really tell you where to go. That's not really the point. When you actually find where you're supposed to go, the game will give you an obvious clue. Either like there'll be like bloody handprints on it, or like there'll be like light on it. That's the game giving you a clear sign of where you're supposed to go now. That's not the problem. The problem is finding out where it is. The problem is finding where you're supposed to go while you're being chased and hunted. And people would say this is better, like it adds more tension. But to me, it's just frustrating because, like I said, like it all adds up because, like, you can't even enjoy a good chase on this game. And one thing that I still like about Outlast, because as you guys know, I'm getting very tired of Outlast's gameplay where you can't fight back. One thing that I still like about Outlast is the chases. The chases are fun, they're intense, they get your heart going. And in Outlast 2, you just can't have that. Like in Outlast 1, the chases were just so exciting. Like you were being chased by these terrifying people, the adrenaline rush, the intensity, finding a place to hide, like, just it gets you excited. But in Outlast 2, that simply just doesn't exist because like the chase scenes are just so bad. And not only that, but in chapter 2, they have like this enemy. It looks like something from like this movie. I forgot what it's called, but like basically like it looks like fucking Ferritor from Mortal Kombat X. There's this character called Nick and Laird, and there's this like little fire arrow guy. I believe he's the one called Laird. I get confused with the names. And basically, he fires arrows at you, and you take one hit from these arrows and you die. He's basically a one-shot kill, but he's also a range enemy. This little fucker killed me so many times. I felt like I was being quickscoped in Modern Warfare in a fucking Outlast game. Are you serious? I mean, he's a range enemy for God's. And I know people say like, since this is one of the boss type enemies, like Outlast 1, like, in Outlast 1, like the enemies like, Eddie Gluskin and Chris Walker and Wallrider, those were boss enemies and they would kill you in one shot on nightmare mode, right? Okay, I understand that, but this guy is a range enemy. He is literally a range enemy. So like it doesn't really make sense why he's a one shot kill. So like it's extremely frustrating at times. Like just one hit from his stupid little arrow and he'll kill you. And it's gonna get a lot more frustrating at some segments of this chapter. Like some segments of this chapter where you're like, trying to run away from Nick and Laird. Like his stupid little arrow is so annoying and there's just gonna be so many segments in this specific chapter that are just going to piss you off so bad. So yeah, that's chapter 2. The last chapter, aka the chapter with the heretics. This chapter is also pretty shit. Although I do like the location that it puts you in. The location that it puts you in is genuinely creepy and like you feel like you're being stalked. So the third chapter's location is good. I do like the games. I do like the third chapter's location. It does feel really good. It's really creepy at times, and like I just like the environment in general. But there is one segment of the third chapter where you literally gotta just row your boat gently down the stream. And not only that, but there's also a game-breaking bug where your boat will just stop. Like even though you're like clicking the buttons, like it'll just stop. So unfortunately, like I'm just gonna explain this real quick. All chapters in this game just have some really really annoying segments, and that's why Outlast 2 is just not a really good game. And it's even worse when you realize that there are some like in these segments there are some parts that are really really fun. They're scary, they're intense. It's fun to explore the areas, and they're fun. But then it just fucks it up midway. Like that's what this whole game is. Like this whole game it has so much potential. Like the whole game has so much potential, and like when you see it and you start getting excited and when you really start to appreciate how good the game gets, the game just does something that pisses you off. That's the problem with Outlast 2's gameplay. The gameplay has some really good moments, but at the same time it'll just piss you off because of how stupid some of the segments could be. Now, in terms of the scare factor, Outlast 2 actually kind of mixes psychological horror and survival horror because, like, one thing that I did like is the school sections. There are some moments in the game where, like, your character, like, starts to, like, hallucinate and, like, you're, like, transported to, like, a really creepy school. And, like, I love this idea. A creepy haunted school at night is a fine idea, especially for a horror game. And Outlast 2 has that. And for the most part, like I like how it mixes like psychological horror. It's kind of like Layers of Fear because like when you get to these school sections, the game really starts to just mess with your head, kind of like Observer and Layers of Fear. And I love how it does that. I love how Red Barrels took survival horror, which is what they're best at, and psychological horror, which is what Blooper Team is best at. Layers of Fear. I love how Blooper Team mixed it up a little bit. And for the most part, the school scenes, I mean, they're good. Like it's the school scenes are more about exploration, and like if you're a fan of walking sims, then this is going to be the sections that are going to appease you. But there are some times where you're going to be chased by the school demon, and if you're playing on nightmare mode, he's fast as fuck. So yeah, the school scenes, I'd say the school scenes are probably the best part of Outlast 2 because not only are they just scary and tension filled like a horror game should be, but I love how it just messes with your head because like not only are you being chased by the school demon, but this like when you get to the school scenes, it's also just messing with your head like a psychological horror game because it is a psychological horror game. I love how Outlast 2 mixes it up a little bit. Now, to wrap things up, Outlast 2 is a decent survival horror game. It pisses you off in so many segments, and also, I really don't like the payout of this game, like the ending, and and also the suffering. Like what you went through in this game just really didn't feel like it was worth it. I mean, your character Blake, he's basically trying to save a girl who's already dead, Jessica, from the school, and now a girl who's about to be dead, Lynn, his wife, and it just feels like it just doesn't feel worth it. Like in Outlast 1, like you were this guy who was trying to get this scoop from this like asylum that was like abusing his patients, and you obviously you got more than what you bargained for, and like even though you still died at the end of the day, like it's still like it still felt like a better payoff. But like in Outlast 2, like you're just trying to save your wife, and like she still dies at the end. The character that you play as still dies at the end, and the ending was just so horrible. I feel like this game was basically like, nope, just fuck you, because like after all that shit, after all that bullshit that I went through, was just for nothing. And like my favorite part of the game is definitely the mines. Like there is a part of this game you're like deep underground. This was a part of the game that I liked because I love how claustrophobic it was. And unlike chapter two, there was not a lot of dead ends. Like you had places to hide in this segment. So, like my favorite segment, and in my personal opinion, the best segment is definitely the mines because like it's claustrophobic. You're still being chased, and the heretics. These enemies, the heretics, are also extremely scary. I mean, they kind of play like zombies. Actually, they're kind of like zombies. Like they're screaming after you. They like the way they run, like like they're like flapping their arms all over the place. Like it just these enemies are definitely the scariest. So I really like the heretics. And like the last chapter, I'll say one thing. The last chapter is definitely the game at its best. The school scenes are at its most terrifying. The school demon is always chasing you now, and just the last chapter, the like where you're in the mines, is definitely the scariest chapter. This is a segment that you will probably like if you wanted this game to be like Outlast 1 because like it's claustrophobic, it's scary, but you still have places to hide, and the game is still somewhat fair to the player. So that one part of the game is good. I mean, the other chapters though. Yeah, and another thing, this game's characters are just really weak. This game's characters fails miserably to live up to how the characters were in Outlast 1. I mean, Outlast 1 had so many unforgettable characters. You had Chris Walker, Rick Trigger, Eddie Gluskin, Frank Manera, like even the protagonist Miles Upshur. Blake Langerman as a character is just really not that interesting. I mean, he's got some like, his dialogue, I mean, it's so generic, and like, half thing he says is like Jessica this, Lynn that, fuck this, shit that. I mean, this guy curses so many times. I mean, this guy needs some soap in his mouth or something if he actually survived. Kisses his mother with that mouth. But yeah, I mean, just this game's characters are just really not that good. I mean, the Christian people not scary. I mean, the people with syphilis though, like at syphilis camp from chapter two, that's one thing I forgot to say. In chapter two, there's like these people with syphilis, and I like how like some of the enemies in chapter two, like they got syphilis and like they actually don't chase you. Some of them don't chase you because like they're too sick. I like that a lot because it makes the game realistic. I like that a lot. And like they're also really unsettling. Like these people are falling apart. I mean, their arms are missing, their skin is falling off. They look like walking skeletons and stuff. They look like zombies. I mean, it's really good. That's really good. Also, the game's visuals. I feel like this might have been what blinded people. The game has some really, really stunning visuals, and for a smaller team, because Red Barrels is still an indie team, the visuals in this game are simply amazing, and so is the frame rate. This game looks absolutely fantastic, and even on Nintendo Switch, this was actually one of the best looking Nintendo Switch games as well. So the graphics are insane, and the soundtrack is also really good. The soundtrack has some really great ambient themes, and the chase music. My God, I listen to the chase music daily when I play a different horror game because the soundtrack is actually amazing. The chase scenes, everything. It's just really, really good. Red Barrel's done a great job on the soundtrack as well. So yeah, guys, that was my review for Outlast 2. In my personal opinion, the game has potential. The gameplay could be, it's a mixed bag basically, because the gameplay could be really good and really fun at times. And if you're someone who likes this type of game, then you're just gonna love some of the moments of Outlast 2. But then it just has moments that ruin it. Like this game could do such a great job at dragging you in. Like when you're either exploring or being chased or like being hunted down. But then the game just does something so stupid. and like it just really pisses you off. So yeah, I mean Outlast 2, it's a mixed bag. The game is extremely frustrating, but also somewhat good at times. The game is like it's basically mediocre. I give Outlast 2 a 7 out of 10. Maybe a 6 out of 10 because of how unbalanced the gameplay is, like, due to like the difficulty, because the difficulty is just so unbalanced. So maybe a 6 out of 10. If you're playing on normal mode, you still might be disappointed because of how the enemies don't even run after you, and if you're playing on nightmare mode, the game might be too hard for you because like but you have to. You gotta play on nightmare mode just for the enemies to be imposing and terrifying because like at least on nightmare mode they actually run after you, because on normal mode for some reason they won't fucking run. I don't know why Red Bros did that. Because like I said, in Outlast 1, even if you played on normal mode, the enemies would still run after you. It just you could take more hits, but still. But anyways, guys, I give Outlast 2 6 out of 10. This game gets a 6 out of 10 for me, simply because of like how like just how frustrating the game could be at time. If I'm leaving anything out, let me know down in the comments. There is a lot more to talk about this game, but I'm just not really interested in doing it because like I'm just giving you guys my opinion and my review. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching my review of Outlast 2. Let me know what you think of Outlast 2. Did you like the game? Did you hate the game? Just etc. Just leave it down in the comment section below. But anyways, guys, I will see you guys in my next review and my next video in general. This was Mr. Rage 22 signing off. Bye bye, guys, and have a good one.